is our first one of the year, and we're going to get back on our track with our schedule of the second and fourth Thursday every month. So 2 a month. Make sure you put in your calendars. And my name is Tanner, by the way. I am a real estate agent, investor, and house hacker as well. So if you have any questions about real estate, make sure you let me know. Ryan Thompson, you may know him as well. He's the other guy that's usually here. He's got a beard and some funky hair. And he is out of town, but he'll be back at the end of this month as well. And so the whole meaning behind this group that we put together is just kind of get a bunch of local real estate investors in one room to kind of talk, network, and help each other out for your goals of investing in real estate. And so today we have a very special guest here, Dan Sheeks, who is give him a applause. Yeah. He's going to give an awesome presentation for us, kind of talk a little bit about his story with all his real estate investments, his book that he's written, and his community that's perfect for young entrepreneurs. So I'll give it up for Dan one more time.
Wow. Thanks. Thank you. So let's see. I'm a high school teacher, so I do this all day, every day, talking to people, but not usually with a microphone, so I'll do my best. I'm going to start with a story that happened to me very recently. And when I say recently, I mean it kind of just ended about an hour ago as I was driving down here. I live up in Denver. So I was driving down here tonight, but about 2 days ago, and this will tie in, I promise. It's kind of a downer story, but it'll tie in. About 2 days ago, I got a Facebook message from my stepmom, who is married to my dad. They live down in Florida. And the message said, it started, my stepmom, bless her heart, she's 70-something, all caps all the time. Everything's always all caps. Her emails and everything. So she sent a message, and it started with, your dad is in the hospital. And right there, like, wow, what's going on? So the short of it was he was short of breath. He had some pain. He wasn't feeling well. They called the ambulance, took him to the hospital that morning, ran a bunch of tests, and the good news is he's doing fine, right? So we'll start there. But my dad, a little backstory on him, he has COPD really bad. He smokes for most of his life. He's on oxygen 24/7. He has heart problems as well. He's not in good health. He's 75. He's had a good life, but he's 75 and he's showing it. And so when I got that message from my stepmom, the first thing I think of and I know someday I will get a message that will not have quite of a happy of an ending. So I did talk to him and my stepmom yesterday, and it turned out he had a kidney infection, and his body was just working really hard to fight off that infection, and his body doesn't have a lot of energy anyway. It can't do a lot, so he was short on breath, high blood pressure, high heart rate, and they did the tests and they gave him some antibiotics and stuff. And as I was driving down here tonight, talked to him, he had just gotten home and he's doing much better. But the reason I tell you that is because these last couple of days have yet again reminded me about what is really, really important in my life, and why I and my wife, why we invest in real estate, and why we have that journey, and why we have that vision, and what is our why of FI. And that is, for me anyway, to spend as much time as I can with the people that matter, the people I love, my friends and family, and to do the things that make me very happy, and to combine those things as much as possible. So I share that story just to set the table of, my guess is that we're probably all similar in that you all are here because you are or want to be real estate investors. By the way, I love house hacking. I currently house hack, and I'll talk about that later. And your motivation behind that, we all have different motivations, but somewhere embedded in your journey, in your why of FI, is that you're probably wanting now or later in life, sooner rather than later, to spend more time with the people you love and doing the things that bring you happiness and joy. Am I on the right path? Am I kind of right? Yeah, that's why we're here, right? And real estate, among other things, can help us in that journey. And it's done great things for my wife and I as well, which I'll talk about a little bit. Before I get into kind of my backstory and what I can talk about, I'm going to pass around. I'm a little bit old school. I have some business cards. If you're interested, you can take one. I hope I brought enough, but I'll just kind of pass those around. If you don't get one, then we can connect later. I'll give you my email address. But so a little backstory on me. As I sit here today, my wife and I have been investing in real estate for about 8 years, give or take. My wife actually started, well, that's not true. I started before my wife because we met about 8 years ago. But she was really focused more on investing in real estate than I was when we met. So we met about 8 years ago. And from then until now, so today we have a portfolio of about 20 units, which, by the way, in my opinion, when people throw out numbers, they don't really mean anything. 20 units could be better or worse than 100 units, could be better or worse than 5 units. And when people throw out numbers like, my gross rental income is this much, that doesn't matter either. You have to have the whole picture. If your gross rental income is this much, but you're losing money with cash flow because of all your expenses, then I don't care about your portfolio. It kind of sucks. So we have a portfolio of 20, and it's kind of changing right now, but right around 20. But it's a solid portfolio, I would tell you that. And it has definitely given us, or put us in a position where we can enjoy life much more now than we could 8 years ago, to the point where my wife was a full-time teacher when we met. She had taught for, well, she did teach for about 18 years. She retired about 3 years ago because of what real estate has done for us, the passive income, and then we have some side hustles that are kind of embedded in real estate investing as well. And then I have been a full-time high school teacher as well for 21 years until 2 years ago when we realized we had enough passive income from real estate and our other side hustles, revenue streams, that I could go half-time. So today I currently teach half-time high school. So I'm semi-retired is one way to put that. But I still love teaching, and we still do need that part-time W-2 income. But luckily, I do love my job, and I continue to do it. But because I could go part-time, I had the opportunity to go from I was teaching in a full-time regular high school up in Denver. And just like any other job, full-time doesn't mean 40 hours a week. It means like 50, 60, sometimes 80 hours a week. To finding and taking a different position in my district. So the part-time job I have now is teaching at the online high school in my school, or in my district. So I'm at home. And my wife, she retired from teaching completely, and she manages our portfolio, which is at this point kind of a part-time job. Which that's a job that she does from home for the most part. So we are both working part-time, and we are both at home. And the best benefit of that is that we have a 2-year-old son. He's our only kiddo, but that, again, changes everything. So going back to that story, spending as much time as I can at this point in my life with the people that matter most. My 2-year-old son is absolutely in there, right? And my wife and I are so blessed and so fortunate with what real estate has done for us that we're at home with our kiddo all day, every day. And we kind of piggyback. She'll work and I'll hang out with him, and then we'll switch. He does go to grandma's house a couple times a week because he loves it over there, and that helps us out. But we have never done daycare or babysitters. He will start preschool next fall, part-time preschool, which is just to get him kind of around other kids. But so that's where we are today. That journey over the last 8 or so years has been it's been everything. It's been fun. It's been perfect in an imperfect way. Roadblocks, struggles, deals gone bad, bad deals, good deals. I don't think we've ever had a home run deal, but bottom line is real estate has worked well for us. So going back about 8 years ago, that's when my wife and I met, and she actually introduced me to this at the time, budding startup business called Bigger Pockets. Do we all know Bigger Pockets? Yeah. If you don't, you should. But they're based in Denver, if you don't know. And so about 8 years ago, we were just getting, my wife owned 2 properties. I owned 1 investment property. I actually wanted to get out of real estate at that point, and my wife kind of talked me out of it. So she said, hey, check out this podcast, Bigger Pockets podcast. I started listening to it. At the same time, we also found the early financial independence community, and we started listening to a podcast called Choose FI. Does anybody know that one? It's a great podcast, Choose FI. And we just went down that rabbit hole, man. We learned everything we could. And luckily, we were very much on the same page, which isn't always the case with a couple, but we learned everything we could about real estate investing, frugality, mindset, entrepreneurship, side hustles, revenue streams, investing, all to be on a path towards early financial independence, which at that point we decided that was our goal. And now where we are today, we are in a place that's called Coast-Fi. Anybody heard that term? Coast-Fi. So we're not completely financially independent, but we are at a point where we're working part-time and we pay our bills. And when I retire from teaching in probably 4 or 5 years, we will be good at that point. I won't have to work anymore past that. And so on that journey, we accumulated different properties. We own, most of them are up in the Denver metro area. We do have 2 properties down here in the Springs. So we're actually down here quite a bit. We have a single family house. We call it the Pink House because it literally is pink in Old Colorado City. That is an Airbnb. We got that probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then we renovated a triplex that's just east of downtown. That is a long-term, all 3 units are long-term rentals. So we have those 2 properties. And they've done, both of those have done really well. We also own 3 houses in a suburb of Detroit called Wayne. We own a little piece of an Airbnb property in Las Vegas. And we own, we just got into commercial real estate, which isn't for everybody. But we bought an assisted living facility, commercial property in Delta, Colorado, which is on the western slope. We did that 4 or 5 months ago, 4 months ago. Just got our first cash flow check for Q3 from that property. So it was just like the last month of Q3, and it was good. It was good. So that's our real estate background. And I mean, I'm just kind of going quick over some of this. On that journey, as I was teaching in my classes, I've always been a business teacher in high school. So I teach classes like entrepreneurship, personal finance, marketing, things like that. And as I was learning about early financial independence and real estate investing and house hacking especially, I started teaching that in my classes because it's just so important. And nobody knows about this stuff, or not nobody, but very few people even know about the idea of early financial independence. So I started teaching in my classrooms, and here's one of the roadblocks that seemed like it was a bad thing at the time, but it ended up being good. So I went to my principal and to my district administrator who was in charge of high school curriculum. I met with both of them, and I said, you know, we need as a district to be requiring personal finance as a high school graduation requirement, and we need to be teaching about these concepts like early financial independence. And to keep the story kind of short, they both, not only did they say no, they said absolutely not, we're not going there, which at the time really pissed me off. But what that did do then was it made me think, well, if I can't reach more students than what's in my classroom, how can I reach other young people? Because working with young people has always been my passion, and I've been a high school teacher for a long time. And that's when I decided to start a blog, which quickly morphed into an online community. And very soon after, I wrote a couple books. So Tanner mentioned I have a book called First to a Million, A Teenager's Guide to Achieving Early Financial Freedom. And then there's a workbook that goes along with it. And I was fortunate enough, very grateful to Bigger Pockets, I had created kind of a couple connections in Bigger Pockets. That's not why I got the deal, but I got to submit my idea to Bigger Pockets. They got on board, and they published both my books, which I give kudos to them, because at the time when First to a Million came out, it was only the second book that they had published that wasn't strictly about real estate investing. The other one being Set for Life by Scott Trench. So this one does talk about real estate, but it's really an introduction to what is early financial independence and what are all the different topics and strategies and ideas and terms that kind of fall under that umbrella. Now I will say the subtitle says A Teenager's Guide to Early Financial Independence. But if anybody in here is new to the early financial independence movement, first of all, go listen to Choose FI podcast. That's awesome. But this book would be of value to you. This book kind of teaches those concepts to a beginner. The workbook is more of a roadmap of exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why to do it. But this is more tailored to Gen Z, just FYI. So I got the two books published. They came out at the same time 2 years ago last month. They've done very well. They're not big hits like Brandon Turner's real estate books, because mine are really niche. But that's why I give kudos to Bigger Pockets, because one, it was a little bit out of their wheelhouse, but also writing the books was my way of giving back, and Bigger Pockets was definitely on board with that. And they have continued to be. When I go to speak to different classes and different conferences, they donate classroom sets for different auctions and giveaways, and they're always happy to help me out with that. So I can't say enough good things about Bigger Pockets. I'm a big fan. And hopefully you are too, because they have so many awesome resources. So the books have done well. I've gone to and have gotten to go and speak at a lot of different conferences around real estate investing and early FI strategies for young people, talking about those kinds of things. My online community that I run. So I have an online community called Sheeks Freaks, which is a funny name, but it rhymes. And the theme of my book is that if you are young, like some of you are here, and you are highly motivated around your financial future, enough so to read a book, listen to a podcast, do some investigating on YouTube University or other. If you're that motivated, which I was not, by the way. When I was 20, 25, I was zero interested in money. Excuse me, and I was an idiot basically back then. So those young people are freakish in a good way. So Sheeks Freaks, the community, is specifically for Gen Z, which is 15 to like 26. Young people who are, again, highly motivated to maximize their financial future. All of the members are on a journey to early financial independence. Some of them are very much in the beginning, because I have some 15-year-olds still in high school. Some of them are actually there already. I have a couple members who, when they joined, didn't own any real estate. The community's been around for about 4 years. And now Jabbar's 22, and he is $1 million net worth, I think 20 plus properties or units. He was just featured for the second time on a Bigger Pockets Money podcast episode. And then another partner, or another member, Daniel, also has $1 million net worth, has about 10 properties, and is crushing. I think he's 26, so he's a little bit more advanced. But a lot of the members, they are on track to buy their first house hack, or they own their first house hack, or they're maybe looking for their second property. They're kind of right in there in that part of their journey, but they're all very young, at least compared to me. And so the community, I have that going. House hacking. I get this question a lot. What was your first investment? What was your first real estate purchase? For me, when I started teaching up in Denver, I taught at Cherry Creek High School for 19 years before I went to the online school. When I started teaching at Cherry Creek High School in 2003, the next year in 2004, I was actually coaching wrestling at the time, and the dad of one of my wrestlers was a real estate agent, and he talked to me one day and he said, after practice, he said, "You need to buy a house. That was my first full-time job teaching. I was 29 at the time. He said, you need to buy a house. Rates are good, the market's good, and you will qualify as a first-time home buyer for zero money down. This just got louder? Maybe, I don't know. And back then they were doing these things like 80-20 loans. So literally came to the table with zero money, which turned out not to be a good thing because we had the crash of '08 for those very reasons. But for me, it worked out. So I bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhome in 2004. And I had a friend, a college buddy, that was moving from Texas to Denver. And so in a conversation with him, I said, Mike, you need to move into my townhome. And you can rent out the other bedroom. And it's got its own bathroom. And we can be roommates. And it'll be fun. And we did that for a couple years. That's house hacking, but I had no idea what I was doing. It just made sense to me. And then I moved out and turned it into a rental because I couldn't sell it. Because at that point, '08 had happened, and I was upside down on the mortgage. That's a whole fun part of the real estate journey. But today, my wife and I still house hack. There's so many different ways to do house hacking. We do kind of a minor, more, I call it like a Diet Pepsi kind of house hack. So we have a 3-bedroom house, and it's kind of a weird layout where it's 3 floors. It's got a finished basement, main level, upper level. Each floor has a bedroom and a bathroom, full bath. The master's on the top floor. The main floor has a bedroom that's just a spare bedroom at this point, but my son will eventually probably go in there. But the basement, we knew we just would never use the basement. So we rent the basement out to a middle-aged professional woman who's single and kind of just in between relationships kind of thing, divorced. And she's been with us for over a year. She's our 5th tenant in the basement, by the way. And she pays us $975 a month to live in our finished basement. We have a shared entrance. It's not a duplex, right? So we share the front door. We share laundry. We kind of set her up with a little bit of a makeshift kitchen in the basement, but we made it very clear to all of our tenants, if you move in here, you'll have a microwave, a fridge, a hot plate, toaster oven, and you have a sink in your bathroom, but you're not going to have access to a full kitchen. So if that doesn't work for you, then this isn't a good fit. So we've always had tenants that don't like to cook, probably, right? So they make do. And she's great. She's awesome. Now, I might have mentioned before, I have a 2-year-old son, right? So we are both in our 40s, and we have a 2-year-old son, and we rent our basement out to a stranger. And we've done it a few times. That's not for everybody. It's kind of freakish. But if it wasn't for that extra $1,000 a month, I probably wouldn't be working half-time. I'd probably still be working full-time, which means I wouldn't get those extra 4 or 5 hours a day with my son. And I would never get those hours back, ever. When my son grows up, I don't get to go back in time and spend more time with him. So people will ask me, is it worth having a tenant? Hell yeah. House hacking is worth it all the time. It's not for everybody, but it is, it's providing us a lot of valuable time that I don't take for granted. It's precious. So that's kind of our house hacking background. And again, I'm going through all these topics quickly for a reason. I want to finish that up and then see what you all want to talk about, because I could talk about a lot. I mean, I wrote a book, right? So I got a lot of chapters in there, 30 chapters that we could talk about all that stuff. But I want to talk about whatever is most valuable to you all tonight. And I think that's kind of my little spiel. That's what I'm up to. My wife and I right now, in the next year or so, we have those 3 properties in Detroit. We decided to sell those. We just started marketing those 3 houses as a package deal for investors in Detroit. We hope to sell those. We're going to go ahead and pay the taxes, cash out of that deal, and reinvest elsewhere. The property we have in Vegas, I would love to get out of that because it's not been a good deal, but time will tell. And like I said, we just got into that first commercial property on the western slope. That is doing well. The downside of that is, not that you need to know this, but assisted living facilities in that market, if you have our tenant who's the operator, in 3 to 5 years they can buy the property from us from a predetermined price in the contract. It's a premium price, but we may not own that property in 3 to 5 years. So we would have to exchange it again. We exchanged a fourplex into that commercial property, and if they decide to buy it from us, we could just sell it, or we could exchange it and do something else. But that's down the road, so we'll see. We'll see. So I am I'm leaving plenty of time because I know most of this night is about networking, but I love to talk. That's why I'm a teacher. If you have questions, if you want me to dive deeper into any of those topics, then I'm happy to do that. Or if you have other topics you want to talk about, I can try to lend some insight. Yeah.
I got a question here. So for assisted living, it seems like it's like the new hot commodity of real estate investing. Would you say that's true, and that kind of influenced why you decided to go into assisted living 4 months ago?
I did not know that assisted living is the next hot commodity. It made sense to us, right? Because baby boomers are getting older, and there's only going to be an increase in assisted living demand over the next 20 years. But the reason we got into it, one, so I think I mentioned my wife manages our portfolio. That's her part-time job. We had a fourplex in Lakewood, Colorado, so kind of northwest of Denver. And it was a C-class property, and it drove my wife nuts. The tenants, we got better, but the tenants were just not that great. And I mean, real estate investing is not passive. It's more passive than a full-time job or trading your time for money or anything W-2, but it's not passive. So my wife just kind of got tired with dealing with that. So our network, and by the way, I know you all know this because you're here, but I just want to reiterate it. Networking is everything, everything. And I'll tell you a story in a second about how that proves true for me. But in our network, the agent that we used to buy some of our properties was just chatting with my wife one day and said, hey, a guy I work with is an expert in the assisted living space, and they're having some success finding some good properties. And they're looking for some buyers. They have a funnel of properties coming in and not enough buyers. Are you guys interested? And my wife did some research, and we kind of chatted about it. The benefit of commercial is that it's technically one property. It has like 45 rooms, but we don't deal with that. And it's a triple net lease. So we have one tenant, and that tenant is responsible for repairs, maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and all the utilities. We don't have to touch it. So it took her workload down quite a bit. That's why we went into it. And it cash flows better, but it does have that potential deadline of 3 to 5 years. So it's not, it's not a perfect deal. So talking about networking, I love this story. Someone I was talking to earlier just tonight said that they were at a Bigger Pockets meetup in Denver last year. Lance, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you said you were at a Bigger Pockets. Has anyone ever been to Bigger Pockets meetup up in Denver? Should try to make it to one. Get on their email list or get on the meetup. They have a meetup group, or let me know. I'll hook you up. But they have meetups up there. They're huge events. But 8 years ago, my wife and I went to a Bigger Pockets meetup. Back then, it was much smaller. It was actually at or in the Bigger Pockets headquarters. And there was maybe 200 people there. As we're there, and we're just kind of walking around meeting people, Scott Trench was there, which was cool to see him. Mindy Jensen was there. I don't think Brandon Turner was there, but I do remember David Green was there. He had just announced that his first book was coming out. So there's some cool people there. And we mingled and stuff, and then we were kind of just saying, you know what, it's kind of getting late. This is 8 years ago, so way before my son, but we've always been kind of old souls. So it's kind of late. We want to go to bed. We should just head out. So as we were walking towards the door to leave, this young guy kind of came up and tapped us and said, hey, I'm Craig. What's your guys' names? And we had a conversation. He had a Bigger Pockets t-shirt on, and his name was Craig Kurlop, one of my best friends now. And he had just started working at Bigger Pockets. Does anybody know Craig? If you guys are house hackers, you should know the name Craig Kurlop, because he wrote the book The House Hacking Strategy, published by Bigger Pockets, which is a great book. I highly recommend it. So I was just kind of talking to him and was very impressed with what he was doing at a young age. I think at the time he was 24, just moved to Denver, just started working at Bigger Pockets. He was doing finance stuff for Bigger Pockets. But he was also house hacking and was involved in some extreme frugality. Like he had some really good stories about how he was saving money, biking everywhere, and all this cool stuff. And so a few months later, I decided, I need to invite that guy to come talk to my class as a guest speaker. So I reached out to him, and he did that. And then he did it again, and then he did it again. And then the next school year, I said, Craig, I want you to come back and talk some more. And he said, I would love to. And I think my boss would like to come talk to your students as well. And I said, sure, who's that? Well, that's Scott Trench. So I had Scott Trench come in my classes. If you don't know who he is, he's the CEO and president of Bigger Pockets. So Scott and Craig were coming to my classroom on a regular basis for a couple years until COVID. And I got to know Scott very well as well. And it was only when I was surrounding myself with Craig and Scott, who, by the way, Scott had his book Set for Life. Craig was in the process of writing The House Hacking Strategy. So I'm talking to these guys who are very much of the same mindset as me, and they're writing books. And I thought, what the hell? I could write a book, and I could write it for teenagers, and it could be about early financial independence. So it was only through all of that I wrote these books, and the journey has continued since then. It all goes back to us being at a meetup like this, and being there just long enough to meet one random guy who stopped us on the way out, and that changed everything. Networking is everything. So kudos to you all for coming out here on a cold January. You just never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what that interaction is going to lead to. It could be a future partner, it could be a deal that they have, it could be a best friend, or it could be all the above. Networking is everything. It's so huge. So that is a long answer to the reason we bought assisted living is because our network brought that opportunity to us. We never went out seeking for that. Yeah.
Have you looked into house hacking for senior living?
No.
It works.
So you're talking about seniors who are still self-sufficient?
Yeah, independent care or sober living.
Okay. So buying a big house with lots of bedrooms and renting out the rooms to seniors.
The operator.
Oh, it's still having an operator. Okay.
Let's say the house would normally rent for $2,500, and you say, "Oh, you operate your business out here, or 10% of your business."
It's actually a lot like what we're doing, because our assisted living facility, it's an old building, doesn't have an elevator. So all of the tenants, they have to be somewhat agile, meaning they're somewhat self-sufficient. So that's kind of what we're doing. It's a little bigger than that. But so yeah, I guess I do know about that, and I'm a big fan of that. And yeah, assisted living facilities, ALFs are only going to get bigger and in more demand. So yeah, that's a place to go. But I will give full credit to my wife. Residential and commercial are very different. They are different worlds. They're related, but not entirely the same. So she did her due diligence, and she read the books, and she networked, and she did the research about what does commercial property look like. I mean, she has a book by her nightstand to this day that says, I don't know what the title is, but it's all about what is a triple net lease, and what does that mean, and what does that do. So she learned all the stuff, and it was a long journey. That was probably a 6 or 8 month process to go from, I think we want to do this, to we just bought an assisted living facility. It was a while.
How is that written up that they have an opportunity to buy that?
It's in the contract that we have with the operator that they have the option to buy between year 3 and year 5 at a predetermined price. So depending on what the market does and depending on what rates do, that may or may not be a good option for them. But that operator is a nationwide operator who's been around for a long time. So they probably aren't going to just be in and out of that building. They're probably going to be there for a while. So we do think they'll end up buying it. But in the meantime, it's a good deal for us. Yeah. Cash flows well, yeah.
I have one in Orange County, California, 300 bed.
Assisted living facility?
2008.
All right, you're crushing it.
Smash.
So talk to that guy about assisted living facility, not me, because my wife does all that.
But I own it. That's why I was like, how was that written up?
Yeah, I think from what I understand in the market now, today, at least in this region, because we were also looking in Idaho and Arizona, that's kind of the norm, is to have that option to buy written in there. I don't know. That may not be true, but that's what we were told. Yeah.
It's good for those 3 to 5 years.
It is very good, yeah. Anybody else have questions or different, if you want me to dive deeper into any of those things, or I could go into like specific properties? Yes.
What's been your experience with long distance or out-of-state investing?
So yeah, the question was our experience with long distance investing. So we do own those 3 properties in Michigan. We did not start there. We had maybe 10 units in Colorado, but at the time that we decided to go out of state. When we did go out of state, really the impetus for that was we wanted to BRRRR, and I'm assuming you all know what BRRRR is. So we wanted to BRRRR. It sounded like that is a slam dunk deal. You get out of it with, you get your capital back out. You're in it for no money if it goes really well, but we knew sometimes it doesn't. And you can just kind of, repeat is the last R. You can just keep repeating that. So I remember telling my wife, we need to BRRRR something and just to try, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, okay. So we went into Detroit. We bought them one at a time. We bought those 3 houses. We BRRRR'd all 3 of them. They have all been solid singles. They are not home runs. They cash flow a couple $100s a month. And these are all 3-bedroom, 1-bath houses in Wayne, Michigan that we bought them all for under $100,000, and after we fixed them up, they were probably worth around 110, 120, and today they're worth about 150. We did not expect them to appreciate, but they did, which is one of the reasons we're kind of just going to say, let's get out of Detroit. Well, the other reason is, and this is the big thing, back to your question, property management, because we're not managing those, we can't drive there. So property management is, and if any of you are in property management, I don't mean to insult you, but property management is an awful business. I would never want to be a property manager because you never have good news and you're never calling either the tenant or the owner with good news. Like they both hate you because the tenant side, you're not doing enough, and the owner side, you're spending too much money. Now, the people that do it, God bless them, because I could never do it. But we had some really bad experiences with property managers in Detroit, which is another reason we're leaving. We're selling those, and we're going to be back to where we're all in Colorado. If you ever go out of state, or if you ever need a property manager, I hope you have better luck than we did finding. I think property managers on a scale of 1 to 10, if you can find a 4 or 5, stay there, because most of them are 3, 2, or 1. That's my experience. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And if you are a property manager, again, I apologize ahead of time, but or after the fact. But yeah, property management for out-of-state investing for us was the biggest struggle. Finding properties, not that hard. Running rehabs from afar. My wife did it again, and she had done rehabs in Colorado, so she had the experience, so that made it easier. She did a very good job. It wasn't a smooth journey. There were definitely issues, and expenses were higher than we thought, but it did work. Would I recommend it? Sure, just not as I probably recommend it starting about property 3 or 4, if that's something you want to do. You don't have to do it. But as we all know, Colorado is not that affordable. Places like Arkansas or Detroit, very much. When we were looking to go out of state, we looked at Detroit. We looked at Pueblo, actually, south of here. We looked at Florida and somewhere else that I can't remember. And we ended up going to Detroit. This is funny. We ended up going to Detroit because I have a very good friend that lives near this neighborhood. And it was our first out-of-state investment. So in our mind, we were like, well, if something goes wrong and we need a trusted person, a friend, to go over there and check out the construction or the renovation or just make sure everything's on the up and up, then I can call Brian and he'll go over there. So that was the kind of the tipping point that got us into Detroit. That in Florida, there's a lot of hurricanes. I'm kind of glad we didn't go there. Pueblo would have been great, actually. I think I have friends that have investments down there and they do okay. What's funny is that, so we have 3 houses. I've never seen any of them. And my friend Brian has never either. I've never had to call him. Like it never happened. Like nothing ever got so bad where I had to say, all right, I'm calling my friend. He's going to drive over there and see what's going on. But that was kind of why we picked Detroit. One of the reasons. And we could buy a house for $60,000. That, I mean, it was a fixer-upper, but $60,000. You can't buy a garage in Colorado for $60,000. Yeah. Anybody else? There's a question back there. Yes.
Yeah. How do you find contractors? Kind of in Colorado, but houses in Texas, and the interview in Texas also, right? Contractors here are pretty expensive, right? How do you find reliable contractors that are expensive?
Yeah, so the only time we've used a contractor in Colorado was down here in the Springs, that triplex, because that was almost a complete gut job. It actually was a complete gut job. 2 of the units were. We found that contractor on Bigger Pockets. And if you're not familiar, Bigger Pockets, they've added a bunch of different features, but now you can go on and get anybody that you need on your team. They have connections that you can make. Now, are all of them good? Probably not. You definitely want to vet that contractor with a ton of questions. But the contractor we used down here, it was 2 good friends and their wives. They were amazing. We would absolutely use them again. Did we get lucky? Probably a little bit, but they were solid. But we did ask a lot of questions, and we got bids from, I think, 3 contractors, and they were somewhere in the middle. But their time frame was the best. Their timeline to get it done was the best. So it's kind of like property management. You have to really ask the right questions, check references, look at work they've done, and then also go with your gut a little bit. So I don't know if that helps. Bigger Pockets, though, is a great place to get started, to find that initial list. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
I'm new here. This is the first time I've heard of house hacking. I don't want to take everybody's time, but I'd like to give you kind of an overview. What's the difference between just real estate investing, buying places, renting it, and house hacking? What's the key difference?
Yeah, so that question was, what is house hacking? What's the difference? This group is called the House Hacking Mafia, right? So I think anybody could tell you the answer to this, but I think house hacking is, especially for young people, by far the best way to get started in real estate. But basically what you're buying is primary residence, and you're going to live there for at least a year. And what that does is it lowers your down payment by a lot. It potentially lowers your interest rate by a little. And for first-time home buyers, you can still get into properties for 0 money down. I have young people in my community that are doing it right now. Not in Colorado. Every state's a little different. And so you can live in that property if you buy it. For instance, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You could buy a 4-plex, live in 1 unit, rent out the other 3. You could buy a big house, which is, I think, the more common way to do it nowadays. 3, 4, 5-bedroom house. You live in 1 bedroom, rent out the other bedrooms. Or you can do what my wife and I are doing and just rent out a room or 2. Or if there's an ADU or a mother-in-law suite in the backyard, that's house hacking too. And there are other ways. So you're getting the benefit of appreciation, getting the benefit of tax breaks, tax benefits. You're owning the property. Your tenants are paying down your mortgage just like a regular investment property. You have a very low cost place to live, if not maybe sometimes free, if your tenants are covering everything, and you can move out in a year. Do you guys know the Craig Kurlop story? His first house hack? Okay, so I'll tell you this one. You guys got to know Craig Kurlop. You got to read his book. If you're house hackers, you got to read it. Craig, when he was 24, this is a story he told me when I met him. And he's talked about it on podcasts and stuff too. So he was 24, single, just moved to Denver, and knew that he was going to be a real estate investor. He knew he was going to go down that path and build wealth. He was all in. That's why he applied for the job at Bigger Pockets and moved here from California. So his first property was a duplex. And this is back again 8-9 years ago, so things were different back then. But he bought a duplex in Denver. He rented out the downstairs duplex unit. He rented that out to a couple, I think. The upstairs unit of the duplex was a 1-bedroom, and that's where he lived. So he's house hacking, but he was not living there for free. And so, the pure house hack allows you to live for free, meaning that the rent from your tenants covers all of the expenses. So you're not paying for utilities, you're not paying for maintenance and repairs, you're not paying for the mortgage or the taxes or the insurance. They're covering everything. Now that doesn't happen all the time, probably rarely, but Craig wanted it to happen. So he had that 1-bedroom. It had a spacious living room, and in the corner of that living room, he set up a curtain with some tall stands, right? And I've seen pictures. So it's a curtain, and he put a futon behind the curtain. And he went on to Airbnb, and he listed his 1-bedroom as a shared living space. And he was very upfront. He said, this is a 1-bedroom condo. I live in it too. There's 1 bathroom. If you rent out the bedroom, I will be sleeping in the living room. But it's cheap. It's like $50 a night. And he did that for a year, which you can do anything for a year. Not anything, but again, he was single, and he was a male, so that probably helped a little bit. He met some really interesting people. He met a girlfriend out of that, actually. That didn't end up working out. But and because of the Airbnb revenue for that bedroom as he was sleeping on the futon, he was actually cash flowing. He was getting paid to live there for his first one. He never did that again. I mean, he house hacked many times. He did like 5 years in a row, which is how he then quit his job at Bigger Pockets, because he was financially independent. After I think his 4th one, he lived very frugally, but his 4 house hack properties covered his expenses, and he quit his W-2 job. Since has gone on to start his own brokerage called the Phi Team, and is doing really well there. But he got a turbocharge out of that strategy of just being freakish and renting out or sleeping behind a curtain. And he still makes fun of it to this day. His friends made fun of it when he was doing it. And even his fellow employees at Bigger Pockets, which, I mean, they know what's up, right? They were making fun of him, but now no one's making fun of him. That guy, he quit his job before age 30. And if he wanted to, again, lifestyle elevation, inflation, he would have done that, but he didn't have to work. All his expenses were paid for. So house hacking can look a lot of different ways. It's a powerful strategy to get started, but even my wife and I still house hack. So I mean, it's not one that you have to it's not one that you can't do for a long, long time. Does that answer your question?
That's what I've been doing, I just never followed the house hack.
Exactly.
I started that in 1992.
I did it back in 04, but now it has a name. Yeah. Hacking your housing. Anybody else have a question or a topic? Yeah.
So for the young people in their community who are on that first house hack, what kind of advice are you giving them to get that?
So what advice am I giving my community members to go from their first house hack to their second?
It's like, are you still like low down payment option?
So what?
Are you still like low down payment option?
You kind of lose the low down payment options if you own a property already. That's kind of for the first time home buyer. There might be some programs out there, like one of the members, Jabbar, who I mentioned earlier, he's in the Marines currently, so he has a VA loan option, which is awesome. But the members who are going on to their second, they're kind of dialed in. They don't need a lot of advice, honestly. They're kind of mentoring the other members who are on, about 6 to 12 months away from their first house hack. Now they do, I talk to my members a lot individually on the phone. They might have questions about, like you guys are asking, a different rehab or different markets or financing. There was a big change in the finance world, the lending world, around Fannie Mae loans for house hacks of small multifamily. So that's kind of a big thing going on right now, which can help. So I don't really have a good answer to that. They're right where they're at right now. They're knowledgeable and they're capable and they're confident and they're doing the Craig Curlop journey is what they want to do. Craig's been a guest on my Zoom calls in my community like 5 times. He's a celebrity in the community. Are we good?
Yeah.
No.
Any last questions? But yeah, we're good.
I'll take one more if we got it. I'm going to stick around for a while so I can talk to people too before I head back to Denver.
All right. Thank you so much. Give Dan a round of applause.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming out, everyone. Make sure you do sign in to hear about future meetups, or if you have a specific type of property you're looking for, make sure you let us know, because we do have off-market properties that could be a good fit for your next investment. And we'll be back in 2 weeks for the next real estate meetup, so we'll see you then. Thank you.